So you maybe have some questions, some hi-fi questions, some audiophile questions, some tech, gear questions, things that go around this incredible hi-fi world, hi-fi reproduction, but not only, I would say also recording, if you want, world of music. Yes, analog, but also digital, no problem. What am I talking about? I launched a post a few days ago asking people that if they had some questions and they wanted to ask me personal questions, but also questions on hi-fi, mainly hi-fi obviously, to write them down, and then I would have done a video. So here we are. Are you ready? Hi-fi Q&A, first episode, go. Okay guys, so as you have understood, this is a video based on your questions. There are going to be more in the future if the video has a positive response. So this is just another tentative to try to have a dialogue, since that's my name, and a dialogue, yes, the channel's name. So a connection, more interaction between us, since I have problems doing live sessions for where I live, practically. That's the main issue, because I live in Italy, so when I'm awake, you are sleeping, most of you guys in the US and are in the nearby regions. I know you're not only from there, but that's the vast majority, so I have to keep that into account. Okay, let's start immediately. There's going to be, as I said, future episodes, I hope. So, I wrote down here on my little paper some of the questions. You're going to find them here on the bottom. Who posted them and what is the real question? Okay, so let's start from Matze Flamingos. We have, is it possible to connect an RCA to XLR cable without any problems? Or what are the potential dangers? I want to connect a preamp with RCA outputs to active speakers with only XLR inputs. Now, since there's also another question concerning RCA and XLR, I think I'm going to combine them together, because another guy, UK VIP Sat, asks, RCA versus XLR, which you choose and why? Pluses and minuses for both of them. Okay, let's try to do a combination. Now, first of all, I want to say that I did an entire video on all the different connections, everything you can think about connections, connectors, cables, different formats, protocols. Here is a link. You're going to find all the links in the video description. Nevertheless, so the first answer is absolutely yes. No problem. You can connect unbalanced or single-ended connections, meaning an RCA, classic RCA, or Cheech, as they say in Germany, to a XLR. No problem. You're going to lose some benefits, clearly, but there is no danger whatsoever. It's always better to use a cable for a specific circuit. There's just a better synergy in terms of impedance, in terms of how the design of the circuit was conceived. Okay, so clearly. But if you can't, a lot of times you just can't. That's the way it goes. You want to try the amplifier, you want to try that preamplifier, that phoner preamp, or you have those fantastic cables of your daddy and you want to use them. Who knows the reason? And there is a mismatch. No problem at all. For example, I made my own cables for my Studer and my Telefunken. Very complex, because the Studer has XLR, but the other one has Tuchel, the older German type, converted to RCA, because in most cases, because I change preamps a lot of times, but in most cases I have RCA, so I have those ready. So once again, go ahead and use them, no problem. Going instead on the other question, benefits, pros and cons of it, well, clearly a balanced connection has a little more positive points, we could say, if it's connected to a truly balanced circuit, okay? Because a lot of times, unfortunately, they just put our XLR connectors on a specific piece of gear just to give you an extra option. but it's not a balanced connection, okay? Don't think automatically that you are having a balanced connection, unfortunately. And if you don't have a balanced connection, you ain't gonna have the balanced benefits, which are mainly, well, you know how balanced connection works. There are two signals passing in reverse phase, and then there are summed by the balanced connection at the end. And if that isn't present, they're not gonna be that sum of the two different signals that have opposite phase in order to cancel all the interference. That's the main purpose of balanced connections, because interference can also build up, meaning noise and problems, when you have extremely long connections. And that is why in pro environments where they use meters and meters, feet and feet of cables, you really need that. At home, no problem. Not necessary, at least, but if you can, I think it's a better choice. Also, the signal it has more strength, meaning it can bring more gain. There's more millivolts in it, so it's always a positive thing, I think. So that's always important. Nevertheless, you must remember that a lot of times you probably fixed everything up because you wanted to satisfy that balance connection. You wanted to use it at all costs, and then after a few years you change your piece of gear, your amplifier, your preamplifier, and the other side does not have a balance output or balance input. So bear in mind, I mean, it's not going to be something forever unless you don't care about hi-fi. You're just buying one thing and so long, I don't care anymore, I'm good with that. Then at that point, no problem. I mean, try to do your best for that connection. Absolutely. Okay, this is going to be too long. Let's proceed. Another question, which is an emblematic question. That's why I put it. The LT Data asks, "Hi Guido, which 1000 speakers do you recommend?" Now, you guys, I've chosen this question because, unfortunately, I must say, I'm sorry to say, it doesn't make any sense. Now, first of all, I'm not a reviewer, okay? I don't have that experience, and I don't even want to be a reviewer, just shoveling in gear and talking about it. It's something I do, I enjoy doing it, but not only, absolutely. So that also means that I don't have that vast experience. No problem in admitting that. Absolutely, I don't have that vast experience, especially speakers, which are a pain in the arse to bring in an environment, connect, try, test, and sell, because then a lot of times you make problems connected to speakers. But even if I wanted to give you an advice on my modest experience on speakers, or I could give you also advice on all the information gathered from people in the field, friends, fairs. That could be a good source if you accept that. But still, it doesn't make any sense because you're not telling me what kind of amplifier do you have, what kind of room do you have, what kind of sound you are looking for. There are a lot of questions you have to tell me. I mean, the budget isn't enough, clearly. Actually, the most important thing is to understand what kind of speaker you want or you already have. That's the main point of everything. Otherwise, it's difficult to answer. Okay? Let's proceed to our next question by Wally Allgood. What do you think about Class D? Have you had a chance to hear any of the higher end Class D amps, such as the Axis Forte? No, I did not hear Axis Forte. The only Class D I've heard here in my system, which is the one that counts, is the AGD Audions. Maybe you've heard about them. They're gorgeous. I did an entire video. Here is a link. Once again, the links are also here below. Those are Class D, and they're also GaN fit, okay? Gallium nitride FET. So there are a special type of Class D. So I can't, once again, declare that I have who knows what experience with Class D amplifiers. I must admit, though, that the Audions by AGD, by Angelo Guerra, are something exceptional. Fantastic stuff. Not as good as my Sony, my VFET Sony. If you're interested in my VFET Sony, vintage Sony, yes, Sony, when Sony was great. A lot of people think I'm crazy, but yes, Sony has an incredible past, you guys, in the 70s and 80s. I mean, something you can't even imagine today. And because they had incredible resources, okay? So they could really do research and development and create these exceptional machines that they're never gonna be made again. So take a look at that video, also here below, where I reveal that is, and it still is, my solid state reference, absolutely. Nevertheless, the second one really after that is the Class D by AGD. Fabulous. Let's proceed. Okay. So, Lucas Rajmont, or Raymond, sorry if I'm butchering all these names, asks, is there any level of the quality of listening apparatus, speakers, amplifiers, DACs, when you start to find faults, errors in the recordings you are listening to? Meaning, the quality of listening apparatus is much higher than the ones used in recording studios. Now, this is clearly, English is not his first language, neither is mine. In any case, I think he's asking that if you have quality gear to listen, okay, for playback, can you detect problems in the recording? Oh boy, I mean, that's why we do monitoring. That's why they exist monitor speakers. I mean, that is the phase when you test everything. Because a lot of times, maybe you're not understanding correctly what's happening if you're just listening back with a pair of headphones on the fly. I mean, if you have a proper setup, a quality setup, of course you can detect if there are problems in a recording. And a lot of times, they will persist. They will be there and stay there. And once you purchase that record and you're in your seat, and you have as they say, a revealing type of system, at that point, indeed, you will find the flaws. For example, one flaw I find a lot of times is how they record piano music. A lot of times, with all those huge harmonics and not with the proper phase, not with the proper microphone, you may sense some issues that something is not properly going on the recording and hence on the playback. This is just one example. Okay. Let's proceed. ChrisMag999 asks, what was the main sonic improvement of your EMT versus the Kuzma? Okay, for those of you who don't know, I had my beloved belt drive Kuzma Stubby R turntable for a few years, and recently I went with my EMT 930 idler type of turntable. Well, in that video, actually, I did go over this aspect, but I can say something else, no problem. Well, first of all, I would never recommend doing it, okay? Because the differences are not night and day. They're not huge, okay? Considering that a new EMT refurbished costs a lot of money, and already the Kuzma, it's very expensive. The Kuzma is absolutely a bargain. Well, a bargain. Let's say, since it costs less, almost there. But there are differences. I mean, I like more the EMT. But once again, I'm not ripping my hair off. It's not a night and day difference that I couldn't live with. No. But I wanted to try a quality idler drive and EMT, the classic EMT turntable 930 here in my environment. And now I'm happy to say now I know exactly how it sounds and I like a lot. What do I like more? Well, it's difficult to explain. You just get a sense of pace, of rhythm. Also, we could say of micro details in the transients. And in general, the timbre of instruments are a little more convincing. So we could say those are the main aspects that stand up. But once again, it's not that different. I mean, I think that when you are already in the situation of adopting a decent quality turntable, it's better to invest money in something else. There's no need to go to the verdicts. Absolutely. That's my opinion. Let's proceed. Okay, RM Mastering asks, in your opinion, long question, are there any real differences between cheap USB cables and audio-grade expensive cables. I believe you're asking USB, cheap USB and quality USB, always USB cables. I just like your opinion on this because in my opinion, and he gives his own, well, I can continue reading. In my opinion, there's no difference. It's just a marketing gimmick to make rich hi-fi owners spend their money. I don't see how a digital stream can be affected in such a way that the analog signal concerned will be different after being converted from the DAC. Unless the DAC has issues with the input digital stream, then there's no reason to blame the cable for this. It's how the DAC processes the signal that's been... Okay, you already have your idea, I guess. I don't know, it's almost a statement. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but you got the message. Well, actually, I used to think that there was no difference, actually. But then I started to notice that there was. Yes, now a lot of people are going to probably turn off the video or write who knows what here below. But we do have to remember one important fact. I always remark this, underline this, that digital doesn't mean anything. Digital actually is analog. It travels in an analog form, voltage. There are pulses, okay? It's the same thing practically. So it's gonna also undergo all the different problems that a normal analog cable, classic analog cable, is gonna have. So if you recognize that an analog cable can have problems, let's say just interference, then you can also understand that that's gonna take place also on USB. And actually USB is quite prone to noise coming actually from inside computers and things like that. Nevertheless, it's not an optimal connection, especially if it goes distant, okay? You have to keep USB short, always. That's a no-no if it starts going for meters and meters, absolutely. So in my case, I would say yes, but I wouldn't spend my budget there. As you know, first speaker cables, then power cables, then interconnects, in my opinion. Let's proceed. Okay. Now we have a question in Italian by Tommaso Bernardinetti. I translated for you. Hi dear, I wanted to know what you think of the abysmal difference, huge difference between CD and vinyl, with the same remastered in recent years. Just see the DR, dynamic range, data, that with the same remaster you have several data. Much better with vinyl, while very compressed for the CD. Why is the same master for both of them are not used in a way without compressing that of a CD? I don't understand why they have to do these things. Thanks for the reply. Well, actually, we'd said this in different situations, in different videos, split up maybe. Here is a video I dedicated to digital on vinyl, where I go also on the mastering. So take a look at that. Well, first of all, we have to remember, as I always say, that the purpose of mastering is to create a specific version for a specific medium, okay? That's why we do masters. It's not that we do a master like that for everything. Unfortunately, today we tend to do that, especially in low-quality productions. They don't do a dedicated master for vinyl, a dedicated master for CD, a dedicated master for Spotify, or whatever it is. That probably is not taking place always. But if we're talking about with a minimum decent quality, yes, there is going to be. And that is also why a vinyl record, even if done today, which is not optimal, and it comes from obviously a digital master, is probably going to be a little better. If somebody's going to remember that I went to Phonoprint, which is a famous mastering facility studio here in Bologna in Italy. Here is a link. I'm almost finished the links. If I finish them, you're going to find them here below. It's all in Italian, but I did phrase by phrase translation beneath it, where I discussed with a mastering engineer, and he said that when we have to do a master for vinyl, we know that that person is going to take care of that. It's going to pay attention. It's going to listen to it differently. When we're doing instead masters, the remaster or a master for a digital version whatsoever it is, going to be streaming or a CD, it's not going to be that careful and not going to be respectful of the dynamics. Because as you said, that is one of the main problems. I mean, there is a lot of compression, the so-called loudness war. And on vinyl, usually they pay more attention and they put a little less compression. That is true. That's not going to happen always, absolutely, especially today. But in a good number of cases, yes. And that's why you have a higher dynamic range in most cases. So that's why it's better to buy vinyl. That's one of the main reasons I said in that video. Just for the mastering. We're not even talking about the format of digital, analog, what is better, what is not. The mastering. The mastering in most cases is going to be better. Unfortunately for a lot of people, I understand that. Okay, let's proceed to our next question from Itayash Kenadzi 2895. Writing again. I'm sorry. I need more inputs for my receiver. Okay. I think I finished them. One option is the multi-input you recommended, okay? Other is a preamp that will both give me more ins and boost audio quality. Thanks. Is this a question? Seems like it. Well, both solutions are absolutely valid, I think. If you already have a quality preamp, obviously it's better to get a passive aux, or just a switch for adding multiple inputs. Clearly, it's not the best solution. As you know, the more interruptions of the signal, the worse it is, but it's not that bad, especially if you're using quality connectors and connections. So if you use a quality switch, that's a great idea to have multiple, more inputs to your preamplifier. But from what I understand, you don't know, you're on the fence to getting a preamplifier or using the switch like I said. In fact, someone below said very interestingly, I added also the reply of this other guy, a preamplifier will not improve the sound quality. It will only ruin it. Try passive ones. I completely disagree with this statement. Not at all. Actually, I have refined a lot my experience, my sound with preamplifiers. I know it's you're following who is writing something like this, or people who think that follow the logic that I don't want to put another machine in the middle of the chain. And this is even more convincing if you think that the preamplifier, but that's not the case, it's only routing the signal, meaning in, out, I have the volume. So a lot of people just think it's something that it's going to redirect the signal, and I have a volume knob, which I can find maybe on my amplifier, sometimes, or the integrated amplifier. Tube amps have also the little volume, even though they're considered power amps, or even a passive, as he said, a passive preamp, or simply other stuff that already has it. A lot of DACs already have an integrated preamp inside, which is the same thing at that point, or CD players and things like that. Well, okay, once again, I completely disagree. A preamplifier can bring great benefits. Also because it gives more gain to the signal. And this is something that a lot of people never take into consideration. When you have a strong signal, things just work better. Especially if we're talking about tube gear downhill after that, like a tube amp. If all your system is muscle solid state, okay, no problem there probably. Maybe you're probably right. But nevertheless, don't relegate all the amplification on the amplifier, okay? Even though it appears to be counterintuitive, a preamplifier is also amplifying. And it gives that little oomph more of gain, which will help. Plus, let's say it, yes, it will also add its color. I like that. I do not want complete transparency. Absolutely. I don't think that's engaging, but that's me. So I think there isn't an answer to this. You have to see what you like, first of all, and what happens when you put a specific preamp or a passive preamp and things like that, okay? So that's a little bit of my opinion and a recommendation on how to do that. Okay, our last question from Last to Die 2021. What is a real audiophile? Is it one who uses a ton of money on equipment, or a guy like me who does the best he can with the little money her got to make a decent setup and enjoy the music the best way they can? By the way, my setup is low cost, an Argon TT2 turntable made by Project, an NAD RIA and Project Headbox 2, headphone amp, Sony MDR1A, headphones and Sennheiser HD 560s headphone. Not a high-end setup, but I do consider myself an audiophile. And yes, you are absolutely an audiophile. First of all, because you're watching at a dial. No, I'm just kidding. No, actually we did recently a video on questions audiophiles should ask themselves. Here is a link. Once again, if I finished them, you're gonna find it here below. It's pretty recent though. And where we also mentioned this, I also refer to another video where we question what is an audiophile, because it is not an easy answer, and there is this bias, unfortunately, that it has to be high-end. Audiophilia is not high-end. Absolutely. That is the verdicts. That is the quintessential. That is the apex of it, okay? And unfortunately, it costs a lot. And in most cases, as we have learned on this channel, you don't need it. Sometimes it's just to make it seem more important, more better than the other stuff, okay? But a lot of times instead, there's a lot of research and development. I did a video on this. If high-end is just high expense. At this point, I'm sure I finished the links. You're gonna find that also here below. But apart from that, audiophiles is a person that cares, okay? Cares about the playback, that he enjoys audio, first of all, not only music, I would say, but clearly it has an extra attention to the music, the way it is played back. And as we mentioned in that other video, like Steve Guttenberg says, somebody that sits down and listens, enjoys, doesn't do something else, okay? But that could be also a music lover. Audiophiles really have to have a special attention to playback. And already, if you're asking yourself, how could I make my sound better with just a little small modification, tweak, even just moving your speakers, that's an audiophile gesture, okay? So no question, you don't need to be rich or put a lot of money or rob a bank to buy high-end equipment, hence you're an audiophile. No, absolutely not. You can have great results, first of all, with a good budget. You really have to know how to do your choices clearly. But apart from that, it's the approach. It's the approach that makes an audiophile. Thank you, guys. And if you have other questions here below, but we'll do, as I said, another episode, absolutely. But if you have further questions on these topics, write them here below in the comments and we'll try to answer them. Thank you again for watching, and remember that music is born analog. Bye!
Hey there, if you are enjoying my content, please consider to subscribe. It's free, and it will help the channel tremendously. Also, don't forget to explore my prior videos. There's something for everyone.
Welcome to the audiophile community.